had to like just start over completely after I'd gone through like an hour of stuff. It was so frustrating.
I imagine that's how it feels when you go to rehab for your third or fourth time.
Mm-hmm. Like editing a podcast.
A lot like editing a podcast, only lower stakes.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you're getting paid more to go to rehab.
That's true.
He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere 200 animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it.
And lo, for the earth was empty of form, and void, and darkness was all over the face of the deep, and we said, look at that fucker dance.
Welcome to Heat Death of the Universe. We are contacting you in a pre-recorded fashion from the safety of our sober living residential treatment bunker and facility on April 6th, 2021. Holy shit, it's 11:11 p.m. That's not the first time we've introed the podcast at that exact time.
We've done it at other times at 11:11?
Like recently, yeah. And I want to say that's happened like at least twice before. For sure once before, like very recently.
11:11 is the official time of the cast.
I think so.
Maybe
that's why I was just subconsciously dicking around and not getting started. I was waiting till 11:11 without even realizing it.
You know, we used to record in the mornings.
Yeah.
I think we've even recorded in one afternoon, though I'm not sure if that's true. Have we ever recorded in an afternoon?
Yeah.
Maybe on like a Sunday.
When we did on Sundays, that was more likely. But
oh, yeah.
It feels like forever ago.
We did used to just do it on Sundays, didn't we?
Yeah. Why does it feel so long, even though it's not?
So long ago?
Yeah.
It's months ago, man.
I think maybe, well, yeah.
Months are a long time, depending on how you
I think
look
part of it is that we mostly have recorded twice a week. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so too.
Also, time is just a paradox. Seems so long and so short. At the same time.
Time moves so quickly for me, and I hate it.
Me too.
Just hate it. But I also feel like...
So we'll see you next week.
certain things are really short.
Aging sucks.
Like my time with our listeners. Why is it so short?
So today we're gonna just wax depressingly and philosophically. No. We will talk about another terrible industry. Jason will read us some poems about the ravages of time And we will also talk about another area of life that, leave it to modern day America to monetize one more aspect of being alive, which is addiction, having problems with substances, and the rehab industry and how corrupt and gross and exploitative it is. I was going to say on a positive note, but I don't think there's any positive note to this subject that I've picked up from any research.
The only positive notes that I've seen, and they're not that positive, but there is a push for more regulation on some of the stuff that's fucked up.
Yeah,
really
like
regulation
it's at least being more. It's being slowly. People are becoming more aware of this is even a problem. I knew a little bit about it before, like we decided we were going to do an episode about this, but
yeah, me too.
I didn't know the full extent of it at all.
Really. I didn't really know about the brokering.
Yeah, that's the big thing I learned as well.
I knew about the conditions. I knew about the fail rates. I kind of knew about a lot of it just being unlicensed and not so like there would be no like rigor behind the treatment, no like medical expertise or whatever you want to call it behind the treatments.
I knew there was some of that, but the full extent of like the fact that you and I or anybody can just open a sober living facility. So, but I guess we're going to get into that in a second. Maybe we should start at the beginning. And I guess the beginning is like
drugs.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there's been some awareness of like addiction and substance abuse, like probably as far back as humans have been using substances, which is basically always. But I guess like the modern understanding of like abusing alcohol in particular is relatively recent.
I think so.
There's like some records of ideas of how to treat alcohol abuse that go back to like the 1700s.
I'm surprised there's not something earlier. Like,
I think there must be too, but I just had this one particular source that I'm looking at. I was surprised about that too. I thought it would be like ancient Greece, like
yeah. My head was like I was expecting you to say ancient Greece.
Yeah, for some reason, this timeline of history of addiction treatment starts a lot later. But in any case, the point is that it goes back a long time. But like, I guess there's been like kind of two big innovations, at least, and I guess we're only really talking about, I guess, the U.S. particularly, but I mean, I think the model for treating addiction is kind of the same, at least throughout Western civilization, so to speak. Although I know that there's a lot more enlightened thinking about this stuff in certain countries in Europe, where it's treated more as a medical issue and it's not allowed to be exploited for profit the way it is in the US. In any case, I guess one of the biggest turn probably is like the invention of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is in like the 30s. And I mean, everybody basically knows what AA entails, but it's still some form of it is the basis of like most treatment centers these days.
How many steps do they have?
12.
12.
There's the 12 steps, and there's.
Can you name all of them?
No.
But you can name all the books of the Bible?
No. I do remember trying to memorize them all at one point in my life. I think I was going to get
12 steps or the books of the Bible?
The books of the Bible, because I think the church I was forced to attend, they were going to like give a prize to some, like a kid who could remember them all. And I tried, and then I gave up, I think.
I think I did the same thing. The AA meeting that I went to was going to give a prize for somebody could remember all 12 steps.
Oh, I thought you were just going into AA meetings and yelling the names of the Bible to no one in particular.
But then I gave up.
Well, so the 12-step model is still like at the center of one of the numbers I came across was like at least 90% of like the treatment facilities in the US, they all revolve around the 12-step model, which is essentially comes from AA, even though it's used for all kinds of different addictions as well, besides alcohol. Which
I've always been surprised that they use it for other addictions.
Which is
I guess there's like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, which is one fundamental problem is that a lot of treatment centers and treatment philosophies have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to addiction, which is like being proven more and more to be very faulty and like actually counterproductive and maybe damaging even. Like, at the very least, it just doesn't work. Which, like, I mean, I guess a first thing to talk about is just that, like, all the even remotely reliable studies on the effectiveness of rehabs and the 12 steps in AA in particular, like 10% success rate is basically like generous and like the high end. It's I've often seen the numbers like 5 to 10% success rate, and that like
really,
while there was at the time that AA was created, there were no real alternatives. Like it was the only game in town, and
sure.
So that's sort of like, like at least good for you. Someone was trying something. But the fact that it's still being like held on to as this like central dogma and like the only way is a big problem, especially considering the numbers. So like AA will never suggest like alternative forms of treatment. Like if it's not working for you, they'll tell you it's because you're not trying hard enough. Or you're not overcoming your like spiritual sickness well enough, or you just need to go to...
That's very American of them.
You need to go to more meetings. Like that's always the solution with AA is like, oh, it's not working, do more of it.
The solution is work harder.
Yeah, like just spend your whole life inside a church basement,
If you stay busy, you don't have time to get in trouble.
Yeah.
The AA meetings keep you busy.
I mean, it's very... And one of the things like people sometimes criticize AA for is that even though it wants to say that it's like basically secular, that like, your higher power can be whatever you want it to be, it does come straight out of religion. Like... the 12 steps and the whole program, like, were kind of a combination of like these religious groups that tried to work with getting people off of booze, and then it became sort of secularized in some of its language, and then it adopted the like disease model of addiction, which I guess it didn't originally, which is kind of interesting because, everyone will tell you like kind of just like, average people know like the phrase like it's a disease, like addiction is a disease. It's a brain disease. And
yeah. Is that true?
But
Are
AA
they brain
didn't,
diseases?
Well, AA didn't even start like that wasn't even like the foundations of AA. Like AA was a spiritual disease. It was like alcohol use is the symptom of like the deeper, they would call it spiritual. I mean, other people would say psychological or whatever sort of problems you have. But the disease model is more, just like your brain doesn't handle substances the same way as other brains. And I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but there's some interesting debates over the disease model, and like some pretty reputable people say that it's a really flawed idea, and that it's actually like can actually even be dangerous. But that it also, the idea of like it's a disease, it's not a moral failing, is like that was a noble thing, a noble like way of looking at addiction in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, so if it's a moral failing, it's totally the person. If it's a disease, they couldn't help it, so you need to help them.
Right.
That type of thing.
And then I guess like some people that are saying the disease model is like untrue. They're not trying to go backwards in time and say, no, you're a failure, you're a moral failure. It's your it's just your willpower is shitty.
What do they think it is, though?
They think it's more like I mean, it still does ultimately come down to the brain.
Sure.
But it's more like you conditioned your brain through the use. It's not like, it's like a kind of chicken or the egg type scenario, where the disease model will say like, you came out of the womb like an alcoholic, basically.
Yeah, it's like you always have that one friend. It's like, oh, I don't drink because my dad or my grandfather was a bad alcoholic, and I'm going to instantly become an alcoholic if I take one sip of beer. And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I think even people who say the disease model is the wrong way to look at it, they don't necessarily discount that there's some genetic factors that might predispose some people to be more likely to be addicted to substances, but they're saying that it's not a disease like in the way that like cancer is a disease or something, that it's part like learned behavior. So I don't know.
It becomes habit.
Yeah. And I mean, it opens up like a whole sort of philosophical can of worms, I guess, as well, just about like, well, why does anybody do anything? And then it becomes like the classic, how much free will really exists or not type of thing, which like, I don't want to get too caught up in that in this discussion, but like, I think the discussions about it are interesting, and I kind of agree instinctively a little bit more with the idea that the disease model is kind of flawed and unscientific, even though it's like, it was a good step towards looking at addiction more realistically, but like, it's almost like
you
it's
don't
gone.
think it's like a mental health issue at all? Or are we not considering mental health with disease?
I mean, I think that saying it's not a disease doesn't necessarily discount mental health. It's just saying that it's not as simple as like you're born an addict and you'll always be an addict, and that it has nothing to do with, I don't know, there's a lot of contradictory stuff in like AA speak where it's like you're powerless, but at the same time you're supposed to use all of your willpower to like go to meetings and shit.
You're powerless. You've always been powerless, but with the help of the group, we can empower you.
Yeah, I don't know. There seems some weird kind of contradictions there, and yeah, there's a couple of interesting psychologists and like developmental like neuroscientists who have written about the disease model being flawed. That maybe I'll just put in the show notes. It's a little too esoteric for me right now to talk about, I guess. And also, I don't know, I think we want to talk more about the sort of
the good stuff
the monetary exploitation angle of rehab. But as just like I said, sort of like side tangent, I would say it's an interesting topic, the disease model versus behavioral models, I guess they would be called.
Behavioral models?
Yeah, like just saying that addictive behavior is more complex than just like you have a disease that you're helpless to, which means that like you can't like unlearn the addictive behavior. It just means that you have to like constantly battle it, which is what like the approach of AA. While there's other approaches to addiction that just aren't nearly as popular, and they're not used nearly as widely as the 12-step AA model in rehabs.
I think it's weird that we don't use more drugs to treat addiction. Like, say you take something like Chantrix to quit smoking.
Yeah.
Why isn't there more drugs like that for quitting? Well, I know there's the drug for alcohol. I don't remember its name. You've told me about it before.
Yeah, naltrexone, which is used for like opiates as well. Like it's an opiate blocker. I mean, that's another like kind of controversial thing in addiction, in the addiction industry, the rehab industry. AA definitely doesn't like that idea because, well, so like
if it's disease, treat it with medicine.
Well, I mean, that's the weird thing about AA is that it's not really like capitalizing. Like AA meetings are free.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'm just like saying it like to myself, like reminding myself that like I don't know why AA is so dogmatic, but it is. Like it's very dogmatic about it's a disease, you're helpless, you have to follow the 12 steps, and there's no other way. Like that's
because it's a faith-based program, Josh.
Right.
I mean, the reason it's so dogmatic is because it's a faith-based program, and if suddenly they start changing the tenets, that can like shake the foundation of like former members' faith, like that it's helped.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, one of the guys I was reading about who challenges the disease model says that like he was getting like correspondence from people that are like, don't take this disease model away from me. Like it's the only thing keeping me sober. And, I mean, there are other methods. Like there's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's like, there's this program called SMART, which is like an acronym for something that I forget. And those are like almost kind of the opposite of AA. Like the whole point is that like, you're not powerless to the disease. Like it's a behavioral pattern that you can change through therapy. Not necessarily just like sitting around and,
by treating yourself like Pavlov's dog.
Kind of, sort of. I think that's some of it. And yeah, I mean, like there's the Sinclair method, which is where you take like the central thing about the Sinclair method. It's basically like an opposite form of treatment to AA, which is you take this pill that like changes the way alcohol affects your brain. It basically makes drinking like not as pleasurable as it would be without the pill. And like the central dogma of that method is every time you drink, you have to take this pill. And if you stop taking it, you're like impeding the progress you might be making. So it's a way of like reversing the
pleasure.
The pleasure, but like the more and more you drink and the more and more you like reinforce the pleasure, the like reward centers of the brain type of thing. Like it just kind of like it doesn't literally do this, but it's like imagine like grooves being like dug into your brain. So it's like the more and more you do this behavior, the deeper and deeper the grooves get. But you can the idea is that you can reverse those patterns through chemistry. And that method apparently, I mean, it's probably not been studied as much as 12-step programs have been studied, but I remember reading that method is like nearly 80% effective in terms of, but the big difference is that you don't have to just abstain instantly from drinking. In fact, like they tell you not to change your drinking behavior at all, but just the only thing you change is that you take this pill before you drink, like an hour before you drink. And then like, you know, I guess it's worked well on a lot of people. I mean, I've personally taken it for a while. I mean, the biggest flaw with that method is that you have to be motivated to take the fucking pill. And
I can see how that's a problem.
Yeah. I mean,
I can also see how it's easy to forget or to be like, I'm not going to take the pill today because I actually want to have fun when I go out with my friends.
Right. And that's why like the central dogma is always take the pill no matter what you think. Even if you think like, oh, I'm better now, so I can just drink without it. But like, yeah. So my point, I guess, is just that there are alternatives to the 12-step model, but that it's still the extremely dominant model. Like in one of the documentaries I watched, one of the talking heads in it said like, that AA was like the greatest public relations success in the history of the 20th century because there's like zero evidence that it works well. Like there's basically no study whatsoever has said that not doing anything and is any worse, or rather, how to phrase it, that like doing nothing is just as effective, if not more effective, than going to AA in terms of helping you quit an addictive behavior. But yet it's like, it's known as like the gold standard of treatment in the United States, at least, for no real reason. And anyway,
because everyone knows what it is.
And that's like, I mean, his point was like, it's this amazing PR campaign that's like, it's become, yeah, I don't know why. I think another thing I think they mentioned was that like maybe some of the appeal of AA in America is that it sounds sort of scientific. It's like pseudo medical language mixed with like outright like religious language, and that like appeals to Americans on a number of levels, I guess.
Yeah, I think it like ties into like a lot of especially like Puritan America values.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people grow up with. That whole like Protestant work. God, I'm fucking stuttering. The Protestant work ethic. I mean, AA is about work. It's about going to meetings. It's about holding yourself accountable. It's about going in there and telling your story over and over and over again.
There's also that
to
weird
remind you why you're there.
There's the weird contradiction though of like holding yourself accountable, but at the same time you're powerless and it's a disease that you can't control. So like all you can do is resist the urge to drink. You have to like white knuckle it. Like that's the only way you're going to get better, basically.
That's what the people around you at your meeting are helping. They're there to support you.
Yeah.
It's the power of support or whatever.
Well, that's an interesting thing because apparently like even like the originators of AA like didn't necessarily intend for it to be a treatment unto itself. Like it was just meant to be a support group in a way. Although, like I said, like there were no other real ways of dealing with addiction necessarily before that. Well, so like I guess with the modern day rehab it's really kind of exploded in the last like 20-ish years. Like I think it's like tripled since maybe, I forget exactly when, like the 90s even, maybe even a little later. There's just a huge glut of treatment centers in the US. So there's two things to distinguish. There's like the treatment center, and then there's these sober living houses. And the treatment centers do have to abide by certain regulations, whereas sober living houses have basically zero. Maybe there's a little bit, maybe there's something nowadays, like at the state level, but at the federal level, I think there's nothing. But I guess the point is that these places are like just insane cash cows. Like they rehab centers can charge like just insane amounts of money, and ultimately what they're giving you is what you could get at an AA meeting plus room and board, and it just invites a lot of like con artists and pyramid schemes and shit like that.
The way it started inviting con artists is after the Affordable Care Act was passed, which does do good things. One of its under the ACA, rehab centers and sober houses had to offer their services to, like, insurance companies had to, like, offer those services as, like, a medical treatment, because under the ACA it was seen as a medical treatment. Before then, it wasn't necessarily seen as a medical treatment, so insurance companies didn't usually cover it. So there wasn't, like, this kind of, like, incentive for rehab centers to send in or try to get as many addicts as possible, because most people simply couldn't afford rehab centers. But once insurance was able to pay for it, then just about anyone who had access to insurance could go on the insurance company's dime.
Right.
Which incentivized everyone to start, or sorry, it incentivized not everyone to start going to rehab, it incentivized rehabs to try to get as many people as they could
Fill
into
beds.
them. Which is, you would think, a good thing. You want people that have serious problems with, like, addiction to get help, right?
Yeah, it sounds nice. I mean, like, there's people, like, right now are still crediting the Affordable Care Act with helping battle the opioid crisis, which is bullshit, because, like, the numbers have not gotten any better about that kind of thing at all, as far as I understand. But also, you know, the big problem is this this pyramid scheme that is being run out of tons of these rehabs now, which we saw dramatized in a recent movie from this year, I think.
I liked that movie.
Body Brokers.
As with most of the movies on the podcast, I went into it knowing basically nothing. Like, I thought it was going to be a documentary the whole way through.
Oh, really?
For some reason, I sat down and I expected just, like, documentary footage, narrator talking to me. And it opens with, like, a narrator talking to you. I was like, okay, I like this narrator. This seems like it's going to be okay. Then, like, it gets to the dramatized scene, and I'm like, oh, this can't last the whole time. We're going to go back to the documentary stuff. It's like, wow,
funny.
I can't believe they got some of these actors in here. They usually cost a lot of money for this type of stuff.
You thought it was a documentary that far into it?
At least the first, like, 30 minutes, I was still waiting for the documentary to kick in.
It's so obviously not a documentary. Because even the voiceover is very undocumentary. Like, it just sounds like the kind of voiceover in a movie.
No, I was waiting for the documentary to kick in for
so you thought it was like a really long, like, film clip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was the movie that you thought was a documentary for 30 minutes.
At least.
Starring the great Michael K. Williams, who I like in anything he's been in. He's great.
Yeah, he's really good.
I didn't recognize the kids. So the movie, just to quickly sum it up, is about, like, there's two characters that are heroin addicts, and then
Utah, wasn't he the fucking, like, the kid from the new Karate Kid TV show, right?
No, face blindness.
They look just alike.
No, they
Oh,
don't.
man. I can't believe that guy.
I can picture them next to each other, and they look so different. I mean, they have kind of the same vibe. I'll give you that. But their faces they're quite different in my mind.
They look like they could be in the same, like, SoCal band together.
Yeah, they're the same vibe, but they're not the same person.
Okay. I'll believe you this time.
They're really, I'm positive about that. The kid from the Karate Kid show looks like the child actor from Boy Meets World, the friend character.
Sean.
Who had, like, the long parted down the middle 90s hair.
His name was Sean.
Damn. You were a big Boy Meets head.
That's the way that I learned about life, man. Some people had parents. I had Mr. Feeney.
A Meets World head. Mr. Feeney.
We were talking about Mr. Feeney.
Yes. So the movie Body Brokers is about a very real phenomenon that happens. It's happening right now somewhere. It's just a pyramid scheme, right? I mean, like it's like the textbook.
They call it the Florida Shuffle.
Really?
Yeah, it's the Florida Shuffle.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a made up thing.
Because they're shuffling addicts from one home to another, and I think it originally started in Florida by the same doctors who would start like the opioid like prescription mills. You didn't have family members who would drive to Florida to get their prescription refilled because all the people in their home state stopped. Or is that just
no,
where I'm from?
That would be a very far drive from Illinois, also. But
I'm sure they did it, Josh. Probably fly though, right?
I don't know. But there's a very specific kind of scam going on at these rehabs, and it's conning the insurance companies. And you pointed this out, that there's a weird similarity between this phenomenon and the thing going on in the 99 Homes movie.
Oh, they're the same movie. Body Brokers and 99 Homes is basically the same movie.
Yeah, where they're like, there's a scam at the center of it. One is like a real estate scam that's getting insurance money from the government for made up costs or whatever.
Yeah.
We should just say what this fucking scam is. We keep talking about it, not saying what it is. Basically, what happens with this rehab pyramid scheme is, and it tends to be like, so former or even I guess current like addicts, they get kind of recruited by other addicts to go out and recruit more addicts to come into rehabs, and they pay the person like $1,000 to stay at a rehab for like a week, right? Generally,
something like that.
Like it's not even a very long time, and
I think they actually stay at the rehabs quite a bit longer than a week.
I swear there was something about a week, but maybe I just imagined that.
The detox is usually a week.
Okay.
Then the
rehab
stay is like anywhere between 30 to 90 days, but they can leave, I think, not right after the detox.
Okay.
But
and yeah, this whole thing was dramatized pretty well in the movie, and
I think to get the full money from the insurance claim. So like, say you have you're a broker and you want someone to go and get help at a rehab, and the rehab has hired you to go and find like a body. When they go to the rehab, the insurance pays for, say, the detox, which might take a week. That's going to be like, what, $5,000. Then the real money comes from getting the person to stay for at least 30 days, 60 days, because then they could start doing daily drug tests, et cetera, and billing all that to insurance. But
right, the drugs tests themselves are like billable for like a good chunk of money. Didn't they call the piss billable, like liquid gold or something?
Yeah, everything's billable. Much like when you go to a hospital and they charge you $200 for aspirin.
I was thinking of the same exact thing when I was looking at these sober living houses, and like also the prices of stuff at the treatment centers. It reminded me of like you just said, the aspirin. But I always think of the how health insurance companies will, like, the hospital will charge like $10,000 for like a box of tissues and shit like that.
Yeah, that's what you get when you have a healthcare industry ran on insurance companies.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being like public goods. I always think to like a good friend of mine, not a long time ago now, but I was having a party at one of my houses, and my friend, we were all drinking, and we thought one of my friends was having a, what's it called when you drink too much? Alcohol poisoning. Mm-hmm. I was going to say an alcohol overdose. Turns out he wasn't. His gallbladder had exploded.
Jesus.
But it looks a lot like alcohol poisoning from the untrained eye, especially when you've been drinking for a bit. Mm. you gotta call the ambulance when that happens. But I just remember it like nearly ruined his life because like the just the ambulance charge was like something like $10,000, and then there was like the other $35,000 for the emergency gallbladder removal, and he was uninsured, so it's just like instant, just like $50,000 in debt.
Jesus. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a whole tangent, but it's like nuts to me that happens to people.
It's all very sort of intertwined though together, like medical, like industry, prescription drug industry, rehab industry. You can see how they're all sort of overlapping and have.
And a lot of it's, I think, directly on the shoulders of the insurance companies. To be honest with you,
yeah.
Out of all those groups, I think the insurance companies are the ones who like really somehow fuck everyone else. What do I know though?
No.
And then like problem is when there's that much money floating around, because insurance companies, I guess, set the prices, or the hospital set the prices because they know the insurance companies are going to pay them, and they're set in a way that like, because they know how much the insurance companies can pay or comfortable paying with, so they set the prices at that level. And then it creates this opportunity for doctors or people running things like sober houses to profit off of it. When they like, we know this box of tissues didn't actually cost $10,000, so what if we billed $10,000, but skim the $9,000 or whatever off the top because the box did cost $1,000.
Right. It's this sort of exploitation all the way down kind of thing. It's like you have the insurance companies ripping people off sort of at the top, and then it just it sort of it incentivizes other sort of con artists and pyramid scheme types to come along and use that exploitative system to exploit other people beneath them, and it all just seems like a giant multi-level marketing scam, pyramid scheme type thing. So yeah, I mean that's one of the bigger, like more obvious, like fraudulent things going on with the rehab industry is this, we'll just call it body brokering, I guess.
Yeah. Florida Shuffle.
Yeah. Florida Shuffle. And there was that good article about it you found in, was it Mother Jones?
Yeah, Mother Jones.
Yeah, we'll link that too. So, and yeah, like it was a good movie. It's depressing, but I thought it was well made and seemed pretty realistic. Like I read that article first and then watched that movie, and it seemed like
you read the Mother Jones article first, or
yeah, and then
me too, actually.
Yeah, because it puts like human face to the whole scam as well.
The Mother Jones article, I'm probably going to mess the names up, but it doesn't matter because the Mother Jones article used fake names for all the people that it had investigated or reported on. But the girl it follows, Brianna, who had like whose mom was a software engineer, and she'd been in and out of rehab and like got into this whole brokering thing to where she was like being paid to basically go to rehab because like you get out, you get high again, then they come find you and like, hey, give you $1,000 to do a 30-day stint at rehab, and you're like, sure, great. Following through that thing, and then like getting through the end of the article where she'd like cleaned up, like actually cleaned up, but then like because she had missed like a probation meeting, like for a drunk driving charge she had like a year before, she ended up having to go to jail for like 3 months after finally kind of cleaning up. And that shit always kills me because like maybe she really did clean up because the article kind of made it seem that way, but then it's like jail's one of the worst fucking places you can go if you're a fucking addict, and just like it's a fucking trap. It's near impossible to pull yourself out of the pit like that. I don't know, I'm not describing it well, but I just feel like America just like traps people into like the worst possible systems over and over again.
Oh yeah, I mean I was thinking about it as well, like how I feel like I've heard like kind of like folksy wisdom before in the past about like, oh, like if you go to jail, that forces drug addicts to sober up, and it's like so the
I've heard
opposite.
that before. That never works.
Well, because
You
like
go to jail, it's going to make you stop being a criminal.
but like most prisons like are just rampant with drug use. Like it's pretty easy to score drugs in jail.
I'm not 100% sure if that's true, but I believe it.
I think it's pretty true. I mean, there's like a whole, I mean, think about it, like, especially with corrupt, guards and wardens and stuff, like, there's people getting paid off to turn a blind eye and things like that. Like I mean, I am basing a lot of this on like movies and shit, but like, I'm pretty sure that's based on some amount of reality that like, if you really want to get high in jail, it's not too hard. Even though it might involve a lot of suffering, and like bartering, to put it politely, and I guess.
Debt.
Yeah.
Debt to people you may not want to be indebted to, that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's just a TV show, and kind of a really crazy TV show, but I can't help think of like that show Oz. Did you ever watch Oz?
Long time ago.
Yeah, the HBO show. Like the way that portrayed. I mean, that was portraying like almost like a futuristic experimental prison or whatever. But I don't know. There was like a whole like independent economy within the prison that revolved mostly around like heroin. Anyway, what was my point? Oh yeah, that jail doesn't help anyone. Certainly not with kicking drugs, at least in the long term.
I think for the most part, it's been proven to make things worse for people generally.
Yeah,
you get out with more problems than you went in with.
Yep. I had this thought about like just how all of these different sort of corrupt industries like do overlap with each other, and then like throw in the prison industry there as well. And I had this like sort of nightmare vision of like in the future, like things aren't even going to be separate. Like there's just going to be like one giant building that's like exploiting people in all the same ways. Like,
but here's the thing: maybe all of this stuff is proof that socialism is bad.
Okay, please.
Because
elaborate.
The thing that's corrupting all of it is usually government policy and like grants and funding, right? Like the government policy was rehab centers have to accept insurance money. Money's funneled into private prisons. Okay, no, I know it's not that. After saying private prisons, maybe it's because private individuals are running all these services.
Yeah, I mean it's also just
and they let greed get in the way, and they take the money that might have actually been like granted to provide such services, and just like we'll just do as little as possible and keep all this money to build myself a nice big mansion.
I guess another thing to talk about is specifically the sober living houses, because they're like the least regulated sort of aspect of the industry, of the rehab industry. I guess the way a lot of them started really popping up was that like there was a point, I guess pre-2008, like in the early 2000s, where real estate was pretty cheap, and it enabled like a lot of these places to start popping up because anyone can open one of these places. Like you don't need any sort of license whatsoever. Like even like a kind of shitty like get a license off the internet license. Like anyone can just say, hey, this is a sober living facility, and charge people anything they want to stay there. They don't need any sort of background or training or experience in like treating addiction. And there's just a huge number of these places that are like, they're basically just like, it's like slumlords like branching out, expanding their slumlord empire.
It's really messed up. But like Here's the rub for me. Like rehab centers and like even sober living houses, in concept, I could totally see how they're helpful.
Yeah, in concept,
Right.
but then you have to look at like what happens in practice. And
Well, I'm sure there's one or two that I don't think is the norm, but there's probably a few who really do have good practices. I don't want to throw them all under the bus, but I
Well,
bet it's like finding the good cop. I know there's got to be one good cop out there. It's just hard to find.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just like,
well, I'm not even saying like everyone is evil or ineffective. It's just that the problem is that it allows for these bad things to exist. So one example in a documentary I watched, The Business of Recovery, they showed this guy who was like a 6 or 7 time felon, and for like I guess former addict himself. And he was just like, he had like a 3-bedroom house, and he would cram 24 men into a 3-bedroom house and charge them like exorbitant fees. Like he was making like, I forget exactly how much money, but a lot of money to basically do
Sure.
nothing. Like these
to
places
play
just,
God with their lives.
well, and these places just because like the really bad ones don't care at all about people maintaining sobriety, so they just turn into like crack houses basically. I mean, like people just use like it's like one of the guys they interviewed who's had been in and out of tons of rehabs and sober houses, he laughed and said like that most addicts call them like high houses or whatever, because like they're mostly just for like, it's where you go after rehab to just like get fucked up. And there's just zero regulation. And
it's
like
also something that
when you think about like what should be needed at a place like that, like there's nothing like you should have like a first aid kit, even, like let alone like all the stuff you should really have on hand for people that are like serious drug addicts. Like if someone OD'd or something,
you would think so.
one of the people being interviewed said like they don't have like defibrillators, even though they cost like $200. Like there's no mandate or requirements for that.
I mean, it seems like ideally the sober houses are supposed to have like programs for the person who just got out of rehab, and also offer things like job training or some type of scheduled structure. That's like the ideal, right? It's
That's
like
what they're
you get
supposed
out,
to
you
be.
go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the good ones do, but I'm sure there are also ones that just are totally in it for the profit, since it's something that, the people going in there can write it off as insurance expenses. And
Yeah,
the house
or
can
just
charge
get
whatever they want.
people with the means to like hand over cash. I mean, a lot of rehabs just, they demand like huge amounts of cash up front before they will take people in, and like you'd think that before you like accept someone into a rehab, you do like various medical tests and stuff to see if they really belong there. But as long as like the credit card goes through, like that's the real test, you know? We can say like there's probably a few good rehabs and sober living houses out there, but I think like as a systematic problem, like,
Well, I think a lot of the problem comes down to like treatment's not regulated.
it's not regulated. And going back to what we were talking about early on, like a lot of it's 12-step based, which is just very ineffective. Like it's a fact of the matter. Like it works for a very small minority of people. And built into it is the dogma of this is the only thing that will possibly work. Like they're not going to offer you alternatives like cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever. The alternative is, again, like just go to more meetings or go to more rehabs.
Yeah, there's different numbers for the success rate for 12-step programs, but it's usually like at best 50% successful, at worst like 80% unsuccessful.
Well,
Saying it right?
I mean, worse than that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I think that the actual like the large scale scientific studies, like they're saying like 90% unsuccessful, if not 95.
Oh.
But that brings up a really important part that I totally forgot. You reminded me of, which is that I said that the treatment centers, they are a little more regulated than the sober living houses. But even the regular sort of treatment centers, there's no regulation about how they can advertise their success rate. So you go to their websites and stuff, and it'll be like 85% successful, 90% successful. And there were...
What counts as success? Like a year sober?
That's
sober?
I mean, there's a bunch of factors to it. Is like, some of them don't do any follow-up interviews, and they just pull the number out of their asses. Like literally, not literally, rather.
Sure.
But like, yeah, there were some people in the documentary who were doing like studies of like where those numbers are coming from, and they would just call up these rehabs and be like, "What's your success rate?" And they would give a number, and they would say, like, "Where's the evidence? Where's the study?" And they would just say, "There is no such study. Like, it's just literally made up." And the other thing is that in sort of recent years, the term evidence-based has become like a buzzword in the rehab industry community. And what passes like by like government standards for being able to use the word evidence-based, like an evidence-based program, is that you have a single study that says the program is effective, even if there's 20 or 200 studies that say it's not effective. It doesn't matter. You can still say this is an evidence-based plan. And so yeah, there's no oversight or anything about those kind of numbers. And that's why the numbers do seem so all over the place when you look at certain things. Like AA says that they have a way higher success rate than they really do.
Yeah, AA says they have a 50% success rate, but then like peer review journals say that about 1 of every 15 people who enter a program is able to stay sober. So that's like a 1 person out of 15 that's not good. If I was better at math, I could tell you the success rate there, but I think it's like 5%.
One other thing is I guess it's like very easy to get nonprofit status as a sober living facility.
I imagine it's easy as a rehab facility too.
Yeah.
Well, I think what the big problem is that I think it's good that the Affordable Care Act said, hey, insurance companies, if we're going to use insurance companies for medical stuff, insurance companies should also provide treatment for addiction.
Yeah.
That's good. There should be treatment for addiction. The problem is the methods of treatment in America
Are shitty profit-based rehab centers.
Yeah, they're not regulated. There's not a lot of like science-based approaches to treatment for addiction. The popular program, the 12-step program, is like just bad, and programs that are a bit better, because there's so much like faith just put in the 12-step program that we don't use them. There's no regulations on like, in most states, I think like only 6 states have regulations on like how rehab and sober houses are supposed to be ran. I have to look that number up exactly, but I want to say it's 6 states. So like, for the most part, you can open your rehab or your sober house without any sort of license. Like, I mean, maybe the article I read of Mother Jones or the documentary, maybe both of them says like it's easier to open a rehab than it is to start a haircutting business.
To get like a beautician's certification, yeah.
Sure. All you need to open a rehab is capital.
Yeah, like I was saying about the one guy in particular, like he owned 3 houses and was making like millions of dollars by calling them sober living houses.
The nuts thing is they can take insurance money for it. I mean, I would I want people to be able to use their insurance money for getting better. That's why we have it. But like when you go to the hospital, there's doctors there who know what they're doing for the most part. Sometimes I question that, but that's a whole nother thing. Doctors know what they're doing. It's just crazy to me that the regulation's so minuscule on these rehabs and sober living houses that, well, there isn't a model. It's just like profit mills.
Yeah, and one of the things I saw was that so in the documentary they showed like a job ad for working at a treatment facility, and there were no education requirements, there was no certification requirements. The only requirement was having 2 years experience with the 12-step program, meaning like you could just be some person who's gone to AA meetings for 2 years, or just say that you did, because I don't even know how you would prove that.
You watched Fight Club like 5 times.
Oh shit! I watched the wrong documentary. I watched that David Fincher documentary.
You really related to the character Jack.
Yeah, and one of the other things they showed was that like you could get these certifications as an addiction specialist or an addiction counselor in like 6 months online, and those are probably like more generous and more like legitimate even than like, I just imagine you can get other ones like the way that, you know, people can get a certificate as like a priest or whatever. You know, like if you want to marry someone legally, you just go online and like print off a thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess we've hit the point home hard enough that there's little to no regulation on these places, and which makes them just all the more likely to be used by con artists, which they seem to be used as a lot. And even the more like sort of legitimate ones seem to be basically run as like pyramid schemes, but just with like a little more money behind them, a little fancier outer layer, like the Betty Ford Clinic or whatever. But they're all still using the same basic approach, and also just charging absurd amounts of money. Like one of the
a leftist fix of this sort of thing?
I mean, I guess it would be to have these things just more regulated and to maybe be more truly evidence-based, not just in name only.
Taking insurance out of the equation would probably help, as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a universal socialized medical program would help.
Because insurance allows you to inflate the prices on this. I mean, the way these places inflate the prices for their services are the same way that hospitals inflate the prices for their services, because they know that insurance companies will pay the prices because insurance companies make that much money.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I know there are just more effective programs, and at least there are ways to avoid some of the just the obviously grifting that goes on through laws and regulations.
This is from, sorry, I just had to look up. I wanted to see like, because I knew Tennessee was one of the states that like outlawed body brokering, or the Florida Shuffle as we call it.
Okay.
I wanted to look up if people had been prosecuted for it, but I guess as of March 24th, 2020, which was last year, that in spite of massive bipartisan legislation passed by Congress in 2018 to cut down on the practice of body brokering, there hasn't been like a single person prosecuted for body brokering.
I wish I could say I was shocked.
Yeah, so no, this is terrible. It's just I think the only way to like stop like detox centers, treatment facilities, sober living homes, and from being like revolving doors, basically, where like a drug addict and a broker and these people all work hand in hand to like basically just cycle people in and out over and over again. Like the only way to stop it is to like regulate, obviously, and to make sure that the rehab facilities are offering treatments that are going to like actually offer long-term help. 12-step program with like a minimum fail rate of 80% is not long-term help. There needs to be better like evidence-based approaches. And I don't think that's going to happen as long as these people can make profits from it.
Yeah, if the profit motive is there. I mean, it's like the same thing with privatized healthcare or anything else. Like like the more sick people, the better. It's the same principle with rehabs, you know.
Yeah.
I did. There was another sort of like analogy to like fixing cars.
Yeah,
like
the film.
Yeah, that was in the
Body Broker,
the fictional movie, the documentary.
You don't want to like fix the car too much, because if you get it perfect, you'll never get the customer won't come back. But if you don't do enough,
they won't get
no one
out
will
of
trust your business.
The driveway or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked that analogy after seeing it. Well, rehabs, do we like them or do we dislike them?
I mean, I think we made our stance pretty clear on at least the kind of the state of the treatment center in the modern United States, at the very least. It's tends to be more bad than good, it seems like.
And the main reason they're bad is because of profit motives?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I hope they get better. I really do. I know people who, I don't know. I hope they get better. I don't know how they do get better. I don't know how anything gets better lately.
Yeah.
On that note, let's go to recommendations. Let's just stop. Let's stop talking about drugs.
Good idea. Let's see. I will recommend something that I was not planning to recommend, but now I'm looking that I wrote a bunch of things down about it and didn't talk about it. I have a weird recommendation, kind of, because it's not
okay.
It's like for a sort of a weird example of exploitative rehabs. Watch the late 2000s reality TV show Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, which for research I watched way too many episodes of the last few days, and it was sort of illuminating, also just sort of a weird cultural artifact of I think like the more and more I think about the 2000s, the more it's like a terrible time culturally. But yeah, it's only like recently that I look back on that time as like a distinctive time. Like I used to like not even make a distinction between the 2010s and the 2000s. It was all just 2000s in my mind, if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
But
I remember feeling that way.
Yeah, just there's something about like the reality TV of that time, and I don't know. It's a real half-hearted recommendation. I recommend just watching it for it being like this cultural oddity, but it also shows like a lot of the gross exploitative angles we were trying to talk about earlier today. So that's my recommendation.
I talked about it on the podcast one day, or maybe I just talked about it while recording. But I've been really into the K-drama Vincent Cho right now, which I think is maybe the most popular K-drama in Korea at the moment. Actually, no, I think Penthouse is the most popular K-drama in Korea right now. But Vincent Cho is about a Korean-Italian lawyer.
I think you might have recommended this before.
Did I recommend it? And I talked about it on the podcast.
Maybe you just talked about it.
Because we were talking about...
I remember laughing when you said Italian Korean man. I don't know why.
We talked about it. I didn't recommend it.
Okay.
It's about stuff. It's about
the gang of superheroes.
It's about the mafia versus evil CEOs. And it's also about people a company trying to evict a lot of tenants from their houses because they want the building to be turned into a shopping mall or whatever, a tower, skyscraper. We talked about it in the 99 Homes episode because some of the stuff in the show reminded me of the way people are evicted in that.
Right.
But show's still not over. I think it's still got like 4 more episodes to go. Airs on Sundays, Saturday and Sunday. It airs twice a week. Netflix
So
gets them.
You're watching this in real time.
Netflix gets them the same day. It's good. Really enjoy it. It's a dramedy. Some of it's very comedic. Some of it's sad, drama-like in action. But I have fun with it. And if I did recommend it on Nottingham Homes, it's still my recommendation today. It's what
I don't think you did.
It's what I look forward to at the moment. Is watching fucking Vincent Cho on Saturday and Sunday.
Well, it sounds something more sane than my recommendation. So good job.
I don't recommend watching reality TV. I try to avoid it like the fucking plague, personally.
Me too. I mean, that's part of like the weird allure to me was like, I haven't done this like ever. I don't know.
But I was going to recommend something to you, Joshua. Did you see that Dr. Oz is hosting Jeopardy now? So
No.
watch all the Dr. Oz episodes of Jeopardy.
Oh, that's terrible. I hate Dr. Oz. I forget why I do, though. I think he's like a con man, too, basically.
I felt that way.
Oh, that sucks, actually. But yeah, I was watching those old Jeopardy episodes. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Well, shit.
All right. I'll talk to you later, man.
Okay.
Let's say goodbye. Go to the website. Heat Death
right.
Pod. Heat
Yes.
Death Pod.
At
.com.
Heat Death. At Twitter. At Heat Death. At Twitter. At Heat Death. Pod. All
Leave
right.
us feedback. Review us on iTunes. Whatever.
Right, that too. Till next time.
Till next time.
The body breaks and the body is fine. I'm open to yours and I'm open to mine. The body aches and that ache takes its time, but you'll get over yours and I'll get over mine. And the sun will shine and the moon will rise. The body calls, yeah, the body it calls out. It whispers at first, but it ends with a shout. The body burns, yeah, the body burns strong. Until mine is with yours, then mine will burn on. My flesh sings out, it sings, come put me out. The body sways like the wind on a swing, a bridge through a hoop or a lake through a ring. The body stays and then the body moves on, and I'd really rather not dwell on when yours will be gone. But within the dark there is a shine, one tiny spark. That's yours and mine.
The first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?